Welcome to Legislative Assembly Caucusing and Amendments. We are so excited to have you join us for this year's Legislative Assembly. This year's event is virtual, so things will be different than past in-person events. If this is your first time attending Legislative Assembly, you are probably full of questions, but even delegates who have attended Legislative Assembly in the past need to understand the many changes due to this year's virtual format. There will be two other videos for this year's Legislative Assembly. One will focus on what first-time attendees need to know, and the other will focus on how the general sessions will work in this virtual format. The first few slides of both this video and the How Things Work Virtually video cover some key information about Legislative Assembly resources, important dates, and voting delegate information. If you watch both videos, please feel free to skip the duplicated information. On the Washington State PTA website, the Legislative Assembly page is found under Events and Programs. There you will find all of the information you need about registration, voting delegates, schedule of events, voting information, and more. If you find you have questions that can't be answered on the website, please email support@wastatepta.org to get your questions answered. Information related to caucusing and amendments can be found on the voting information page. There is also a Legislative Assembly newsletter you will receive as soon as you register. If you would like to start receiving the newsletter before you're able to register, you can sign up by updating your Constant Contact profile by clicking on the footer of any of our newsletters that you receive, including Leadership News, and selecting the Legislative Assembly newsletter. Old editions of the newsletter are linked towards the bottom, so please go back and read any issues you may have missed. Here are some important dates for you. This year's event is October 23rd and 24th. Local PTA and council presidents must submit their voting delegates no later than October 10th. If you will be a voting delegate, you must be registered for Legislative Assembly by 11:59 p.m. on October 17th. The deadline to register for non-voting attendees is October 24th. The education session is Saturday morning, October 23rd, immediately followed by the Q&A caucus sessions. General sessions, classes, and panels will occur on both days. Amendments to the proposed resolutions must be pre-submitted no later than 8 a.m. Sunday, October 24th. Voting on the proposed resolutions and any submitted amendments will occur in General Session 3 on Sunday, October 24th. This year, we are using Whova for our platform for Legislative Assembly. Be sure to download Whova in advance and become familiar with its features. Laptops and desktops are recommended for full functionality, but attendees may join the meeting on any computer or smart device with an internet connection. After logging in, attendees will not have their cameras on and will be muted unless called on to speak. Any member of a local PTA may be an attendee by registering by the appropriate registration deadline. This year's attendee registration fee is only $40 for adults and $10 for students, and includes access to all classes and materials, educational opportunities, caucusing, and general sessions. Attendees who are not authorized as voting delegates by their local PTA or council president by the required October 10th deadline may attend but not participate in the general sessions at Legislative Assembly on October 23rd and 24th. Attendees may register through October 24th. The voting delegate registration fee is the same as for attendees, but these members have also been authorized as voting delegates by their local PTA or council president by the required October 10th deadline. Voting delegates may attend and participate in the debate and voting in the general sessions of Legislative Assembly on October 23rd and 24th on behalf of their local PTA or council and must register no later than October 17th. Please note that although anyone registered may attend the caucus sessions, only registered voting delegates may submit motions to amend standing rules or resolutions, as well as debate, speak, and vote in general sessions. Reminder that voting delegates must be authorized by their president no later than October 10th and must register no later than October 17th. On the Legislative Assembly website, you will find all the information you need to help you understand how to register and how to become a voting delegate. There are 2 steps to becoming a voting delegate to Legislative Assembly, each with its own deadline. To register, go to the main Legislative Assembly page and look for the blue Register Now on Whova button. Remember, the registration fee is only $40 for adults and $10 for students. So take advantage of this great deal and send as many voting delegates as your PTA is allocated. The next step is to be authorized as a voting delegate, and that involves your local PTA or council president. You must be authorized as a voting delegate to submit amendments and motions, speak during general sessions, and vote. Go to the voting information page and scroll down until you see delegate information, and then click on the drop-down for voting delegate information. At least one president for each PTA will be sent an email containing a link to a survey form that must be used to identify authorized voting delegates. If you have co-presidents, please coordinate who will complete the survey. The survey form linked to the email will contain spaces for the number of delegates your PTA is allowed according to Washington State PTA uniform bylaws. If a president is a voting delegate, you must include them on the list of delegates on this survey form. Your list of delegates must be completed and submitted to the Washington State PTA office no later than 11:59 p.m. on October 10th. If a president does not turn in the names by this date, the attendees will not be eligible to be a voting delegate. Each voting delegate is allowed to represent only one PTA, so a voting delegate will not be able to vote for both a local PTA and a council. If the Washington State PTA office receives a duplicate name, we will let both the local PTA and the council know. This survey form can be completed before or after the member registers. The on-screen confirmation for this form includes a link to the registration payment form for your convenience. Identifying a member as a delegate does not register the member to attend. A separate registration payment form must be completed. Delegates must be a paid member of the PTA, and the PTA must be in good standing. A reminder that submitters will need to make sure that they are a voting delegate to be able to speak and vote for their proposal. Now that you've heard about how to become a voting delegate, it's time to find out more about how to become an informed voting delegate. You have some homework to do. The Legislative Assembly page of the website has several resources to help you become an informed and prepared voting delegate. Go to the voting information page and you will find the following documents for your review. The 2021 Voters Guide will give you the details of all the proposals being debated at Legislative Assembly. You will be able to read each proposed position, a persuasive statement from the submitter, as well as the Washington State PTA Board of Directors recommendation. Proposed changes to any existing positions are shown as strike-through for deletions and as underlined bold font for additions. Please note that only the parts in the shaded boxes are open for amendment and debate. The 2021 proposed standing rules should be reviewed in advance as well. The How Things Work Guide is a multi-page document that has details about everything related to our virtual event. It covers everything from the education Q&A caucus sessions, how to submit an amendment to a proposed position, speech and debate, voting, and more. Please review this document in advance. In addition to the documents we just reviewed, voting delegates can learn about the proposed positions during the education Q&A caucus sessions on Saturday morning, October 23rd. Education sessions are your opportunity to hear directly from the submitters. You will be educated on the topic or problem being addressed, how the proposal would improve the lives of children across Washington State, and why the proposal should be supported by Washington State PTA. If you cannot attend the education session, the education presentations will be recorded and available to watch at your convenience before voting. There will be 2 resolution Q&A caucus sessions. The first session, you will need to choose between 3 resolutions, and in the second session, you will need to choose between 2 resolutions. Check the Schedule of Events page of the Legislative Assembly website to see which positions are offered on what date and time. After the education presentation, there will be a short Q&A session where you can ask questions. Time is limited, so not all questions may be answered, but you can contact the submitter or the advocacy director or resolutions chair if your question is not answered. Finally, there will be a short caucus session. Why do we caucus? Caucusing allows voting delegates to work together on a strategy for a proposal. There may be both a pro and con caucus, and they will have separate breakout rooms. This time to strategize allows the proponent and opposition statements and any proposed amendments to be discussed, well thought out, and written out in advance. Due to this year's virtual format, all amendments must be pre-filed by the advertised deadline. There will be more information about amendments in this presentation. Caucus time is limited, so not all attendees may have time to speak. Every effort will be made to allow as much discussion as possible. Further discussion may occur outside of the caucus session for those interested. There will be members of the Advocacy and/or Resolutions Committee to assist with both the pro and con caucus. Sometimes, after reading the voter's guide and attending the education Q&A caucus sessions, a delegate wishes to suggest a change to a position. Due to this year's virtual format, all primary amendments to the resolutions are required to be pre-filed in advance using the online amendment submission form. These online submission forms will be shared during all caucus sessions, as well as posted on the Legislative Assembly webpage. There will be an amendment writing lab Saturday after caucusing is complete to help delegates draft their amendments. Amendments to positions must be pre-filed no later than 8 a.m. on Sunday, October 24th. Remember, resolutions are not legislation. They are part of the Washington State PTA platform. Voting delegates do not need to struggle over every word, as the proposal will not be turned into a bill precisely as it is worded. Reminder that only the parts of positions that are in the shaded boxes in the voter's guide are open for amendment and debate, and that resolutions may not have more than 4 resolved clauses. Use the time in caucusing to work with the submitters and other delegates to coordinate and prepare any amendments to positions. By working together, delegates can prevent multiple amendments addressing the same change and can also make sure their amendments do not overlap each other. How do you write a good amendment? Focus on these tips. Amendments must clearly state what changes you want to happen. You can ask to strike words or to insert words, and your motion needs to specify where these inserted words would go. Use the language add or insert and strike or delete. For example, in resolved clause number 2, bullet number 1, after the word authentic, strike out the word parent and insert the words family and community. Amendments should also try to stick to one focus at a time. For example, if there is a resolution with 4 resolved clauses and you would like to propose changes to 2 of the resolved clauses, it would be better to submit 2 separate amendments. The reason for this is that if delegates like one of your proposals but not the other, the whole motion may fail with no changes taking place. In this year's proposed standing rules, you will see an amendments committee. Because amendments must be pre-filed in advance, there will be a committee to work with submitters to fine-tune their proposed amendments. An amendment to a resolution may only be considered at Legislative Assembly if it was submitted to the Amendments Committee by the advertised deadline and reported to the Assembly by the committee. The Amendments Committee will report these amendments to the Legislative Assembly without making a recommendation to adopt or reject. The committee may decide not to report an amendment to the Assembly. Each amendment that is not reported to the Assembly will be listed, along with the reason it was not reported, will be posted prior to the general sessions for voting delegates to review. The reasons an amendment may not be reported to the Assembly include: it was not received by the advertised deadline, it was not submitted by a registered and authorized voting delegate, it conflicts with the Washington State PTA legislative program or with national PTA resolutions or position statements. It is not consistent with PTA purposes, values, vision, and mission, and does not relate to the health, safety, well-being, and education of children and youth. It harms or negatively impacts Washington State PTA, including but not limited to legal, financial, volunteers, and other resources, as well as implications to existing partnership and coalition agreements. Amendments to correct grammar, spelling, Punctuation, style, cross-references, and make other technical changes will be handled by the committee, so amendments to correct these items are not in order. Please watch the video on how general sessions will work virtual to learn more about the processes for the general sessions on October 23rd and 24th. If you are a first-time attendee, there is also a video that explains the Washington State PTA platform and how positions get to Legislative Assembly that will help you understand the overall event. Thank you, and we hope you enjoy this year's Washington State PTA Legislative Assembly.